This is the Oneness talking point, and I'm going to move the microphone so that I'm talking into it. How's that? Fabulous. I've just been writing Flow the Preconceptions, a list of the things that I hear, in emails, on website videos, about what flow is. Maybe not so much what flow is, but how you know you're experiencing it. So there's these checklists of outcomes that determine whether you're in flow or not. And I guess as a precursor, I can just say, from the oneness that makes sense to me, there is only flow. There is nothing else. So there's no being in flow sometimes and being out of flow other times. Whatever's going on is the flow of all that is. If you're having an experience that you label out of flow, then that's the experience that you're having. There's nothing wrong with that, and I'm not saying that you're mistaken. My understanding of how all that is works says that if you're having an experience that you label being out of flow, then you're having that for a reason in and of itself, rather than a means to an end or something that needs to change so that you can have an experience where everything is flow. There's no desired outcomes in my understanding of oneness. So this checklist that just came to me, flow the preconceptions. Wake up happy to be alive. That feels like one of the things that's eminent in the preconceptions of what it is to have flow when you believe that you can be out of flow. Feel tuned into nature, as if you could be somehow tuned out of it. No more depression or lag, as if depression is a symptom of you not getting it right, of you somehow being out of your cosmic conversation. And I have some very different ideas about what depression and lag are from my experience of them, as well as my experience as a counselor dealing with people who suffer from depression, which we can talk about another day. Another preconception of flow is that we breathe easy versus that anxious, short, let's check the text message and see if it's someone saying, I'm trying to get on. So we breathe easy, this preconception that when we're in flow, we know that we're in flow because we feel like we can breathe. We feel like there's an absence of pressure bearing down upon us. We feel like there's a bit of room to inhale and exhale. As strange as that sounds when you say it out loud. Want for nothing. That's another, these are just my pickups from listening to Abraham, and not just listening to Abraham. I'm not kind of, pinning these people down or these authors of ideas down and saying this is what they think. I think what happens is, I get told to go and watch some video or listen to some podcast or read some book or whatever, visit some website. And it's not just what they're saying. it's all the comments, you know, all those Facebook comments and website comments and testimonials that tell, kind of, you know, retell the authorship story of what it is for them to experience something like Abraham, and then, you know, have their own life impacted or reaffirmed in some way. And so from reading all this material, I can trace it back to, you know, the law of attraction conversation. But it's not that I'm saying that the law of attraction itself espouses these things, because there are so many interpretations of the authorship of Abraham. For example, I mean, there's the Crimson Circle, there's Avatar, there's, I mean, Ken Stone as well. I guess he's another big resource for me on the conversation about what it is to be in and out of flow, you know, or for your experience to seem somehow disconnected or corrupted. Other people think of it as being corrupted, you know, like it gets sabotaged by fear, or it gets corrupted by energetic vampires, or it gets I don't know, interfered with, interrupted by frequency knots in our energy field. That's probably not the right terminology, but you see what I'm getting at. Like there's a lot of stories on the planet about how we can be out of flow, and the reasonableness of that. The explanations are generally pathological, that there's something that is wrong, or there's something that can be fixed, changed, or healed. You know, there's some act that can be performed in order to bring back some sense of alignment. And in bringing back that sense of alignment, you'll know you've accomplished it, because you'll be able to breathe easier. You'll wake up in the morning feeling happy to be alive. You'll feel tuned into nature. You'll have no more depression or lag. You'll be able to breathe easy. You'll want for nothing. You'll have functional, happy relationships. You'll be in safe situations. You'll no longer experience self-sabotage. You'll make financially wise choices that lead to profitable outcomes. You'll make intuitive food choices that guarantee good health. You'll experience spontaneous healing. You won't suffer symptoms or pain, and you'll be free of doubt and worry. That's all I got to before I looked up and realized it was 8:31 and we had to start the webinar today. So I'm not dissing that list. I'm writing it because that's what it feels like to me is part of that conversation in all of those places where the storytelling process makes it possible for there to be flow and not flow, as if they are two separate things that can exist. And if that's your truth, then I would say that's your truth. That's your on purpose, and that's the experience you're having, and there's nothing that you need to do with that. There's no better way for you to experience your reality if that's your truth. I just know without knowing that it's not my truth, that when I hear about the concept of outcomes being attached to flow, it doesn't make sense to me. In the logic of all that I am being asked to be in the world, flow is the only state. There's the experience of depression, and there's the experience of unhappiness, and there's the experience of pain and death and loss and financial burden. You know, all of those experiences are still flow for me. There's no sense that they feel any less sacred. They don't feel any less valuable. And I don't kind of have a wish list that says, universe, in order for me to know that you love me and that I am valuable, I need to be having more of these experiences and less of these ones. That's not the approach that happens for me. My natural response to any given moment is to be where I am. And that allows for flow to be whatever, you know, to be what is. And it's not some grand guru scheme of enlightened consciousness, at least not from my perspective. It's the thing I was born with, the same, you know, and even the born with thing gets a bit funny for me. There's all of this information, this wave of information that comes in that just says there is no birth, there is no death, except for the experience that you're having, the same way that the experience of depression is just the experience that I'm having. So I think I need to decipher that a little bit before I go off on another tangent. So when I say the experience that I'm having, for me, I guess the closest language I can use for someone else to understand is an empathic depression. But instead of my experience being empathic, which requires separation and some kind of attunement to somebody else's separate experience, my understanding of it is the experience of my depression comes in a wave, and it's here for as long as it needs to be, and then it's gone. It's not attached to or a reaction to anything that's going on in my life. So I'm not depressed about my relationship, or I'm not feeling depression because of the state of the world. There's a depression that's invited into my experience from all that is, I guess. I don't know where the invitation, you know, originates. There's no such thing as from, because it's all just one. And then that experience is real. It's not kind of off in the distance and I can tune to it if I want to. It's very present. But I also know that all of my experiences to which I am present are fleeting, ephemeral, non-identity attached experiences. There is no me that can be bounded and separated from some other. The presence that I have, the allowing an ability to have that experience in its fullness without having a core self that I feel like it's attached to or corrupting, is natural for me. I didn't learn it. It wasn't, you know, imposed upon me, or, you know, it wasn't a lightning strike revelation in reaction to something that occurred in my life. I don't have any of those stories. And I can't give you reasons and explanations. I can only tell you what I'm told to say, which is another thing that is natural for me. There's no way for me to describe it and compare it to something else. We have this funny notion about what it means to receive information or to be told what to do. You know, people will often ask, but who tells you? Where do you get the information from? And it's hard to explain it to someone who actually believes that their body is a thing that's real and that their perception is a thing that happens because of their body. You know, that's a very dualistic Newtonian way of being in the world, you know, biomechanical explanations. And there are other stories coming onto the planet, but it's as if people can engage in that new storytelling, but their everyday experience still feels like it's founded in, attached to, very much centered upon that Cartesian dualism, Newtonian biomechanical physics of how the world works. And of course, that's fine. If that's true, that's true. And that's what I want you to know and believe and trust and go with and have an experience of. I'm not an expert trying to change you or fix you or show you a better way. We're just having the oneness talking point conversation within which I'm asked to espouse a different way of being or knowing or not knowing in the world. So I guess one of the stories that comes to mind is we go about our day believing there is a thing called a sunrise and a sunset, that there is a daytime and a nighttime. And at the very same time, most of us know that the sun never actually goes out. It's constantly shining. So we're just talking about the Newtonian physics picture of what's going on, rather than any other version of that story. So it's kind of like that for me, where the sunrise and the sunset and day and night are the experience I'm having, depression or whatever, happiness, pain. But I know the sun is always shining. I know that oneness is not separate things. I know that the cause and effect notion of separation isn't actually happening. It's not a ping pong universe. It's just one big ocean of all that is, rearranging itself, having the experiences that it's having, appearing as whirlpool shapes in an equal and essential ocean where the drops aren't separate. even our experience of consciousness, for me, in my oneness understanding, is not a separate thing where the consciousness is above and the etheric and physical world is somehow inhabited by or created by or encircled by its consciousness. For me, it doesn't work that way. There are no layers, no hierarchy, no levels, no doors, no dimensions that can be divided. Because even in that physics picture that we begin with, looking at a cell and looking at an atom and following vibrations of separation, when I do that research, we end up at the place where we're in the ocean of oneness. You know, the foremost brain experts, I mean, I guess I refer mostly to John Medina, but there's lots of others, he's not the only one, will tell you that we don't understand how the brain works. You know, and then you look at experts on time, physicists who are experts on time, and they'll say, we don't understand how time works. We still can't comprehend or account for what we call now. So wherever you go, wherever I go, into that investigation of the very so-called physical, mechanical universe, we end up in places where we can't account for the very things that we found our understanding of what's going on upon. Which is why I'm so fascinated by the physics of oneness and the oneness of physics. Because for me, it feels like there's no metaphysics. You don't have to divide anything out. You can follow that line of logic and it will bring you to that place where it's all one. There's no need to make magic something separate. There's no need to dismiss the biomedical model in order to see the oneness of things. You know, the proof of the biomedical model takes you to that place. Any investigation will take you to the place that's true for you. And for me, that place is flow is, life is, oneness is. And it's not a set of favorable circumstances or guaranteed outcomes, although it can be for the people that that's true for. I'm not making it a rule that that's impossible. I'm saying for me, the flow of oneness is what is. So whatever's going on or appears to be going on is flow in my experience of oneness, which allows me to be in any moment on purpose. And again, we come back to this preconception of what that means. You know, he must be guru and you're not affected by anything. And that's just another preconception of the outcomes of what it means to have that experience of flow where everything is flow no matter what. Flow doesn't equate to happiness. Flow doesn't equate to any outcome in the oneness experience. Flow is just the word we use for whatever's going on, is the notion of energy moving, changing, for want of a better description, because again, we all have these preconceptions about what energy is, without any fixed sense of self or point of awareness. Everything is what is and is naturally in flow. And it's not a thing that you can touch and tame and be separate from. It's just that we don't have another word for that. All that is what is. And I guess there are philosophical notions in other languages, in the various types of Buddhism. There are strict vernacular terms expounded by philosophers to explain the difference between the perception of an experience and all that is. And there's only all that is. There isn't anything else. But all that is, we come up with this storytelling process. If that's true, then why does it feel like it's hot and sweaty? And why does it sound like there are birds singing? And why does it kill a cancer cell when I do X, Y, Z? And why does that only work with these people and not that people? And we kind of go necessarily into those places. Nothing is a tangent. Nothing is a mistake. Everything, all the places that we seep into, are explorations, unless they're not for you in your truth. So when I say there are no mistakes, what comes up for you? Because that's the really important part of this process. If I am asked to expound upon what makes sense to me, it's not as a teaching process. I'm not an example of something that you should become or would benefit from becoming or learning from. When I expound what makes sense to me, listen to your own truth. We call them arguments and objections and reactions and agreements. Call them whatever you want. Because ultimately it's about what makes sense to you. So when I say flow is, what happens for you? What truth of yours makes itself visible? Because that's all that matters to me. I'm only interested in you having an experience of what's true for you. And then if you want to go further into that and have an experience of taking responsibility for what's true for you, then we can do that together. Or you can do that somewhere else. It doesn't really make any difference. And the experience of taking responsibility of what's true for you, I guess in that, separation language would be a process of empowerment. It would be having the story that allows you to understand that what is true for you for a reason. And that reason is sacred, and it comes from a safe place, and it comes from a place that's equal to all of us. which is what allows me to not think about the world in terms of learning and teaching, is the equality. So the equal value, whatever is true for you is of equal value. The same way that whatever is happening now for me is of equal value to any other moment. Doesn't mean I'm a quantumist. It just means I don't feed the notion that it's bad and I need to get out of it. And I don't feed the notion that it's better and I need to do more of it. I just remain curious and present, and sometimes the pain is so intense that all you can do is have the experience. There's nothing else going on. And for me, that's a really beautiful thing. Even though I'm screaming in agony at the time, it's still, while it's happening, I don't know how else to put it. It's a religious experience. There is something incredible, amazing, awesome about having an experience where nothing else can be present except for what's going on. And that's true in every moment. It just changes, rearranges itself. So it looks different. You can say, oh, I'm so focused when I'm in pain, or I'm so focused when I'm on stage, or I'm so focused when. And that comes back to that concept of flow. We say, oh yeah, I was in the flow. I was so focused. But my understanding of presence and experience is we're always focused. It's just being rearranged. It's like you have all the same pieces, and if you put them into a shape that you recognize, you can say, oh, look, it's in order. And then if they're in some kind of arrangement that you can't identify, you say, oh, it's chaos. You don't know where I'm going and nothing makes sense and people are stupid. I can't figure out what's going on. I feel like I'm lost the path, or I feel like I'm not doing it right, and I need to pull some things in because I just can't handle not being able to recognize, not being able to recognize the point that I went wrong in order to get here, and the thing that I need to do in order to find the shape that makes sense to me, which is often the conversation that's being had around the law of attraction and flow and synchronicity and spiritual enlightenment. And I think for me what happens is, in any moment, I accept that there is an order. And that's what I mean by flow is. There is an order in every moment. If I'm not privy to its logic, then I'm not privy to its logic for a reason, and that's on purpose, and it's equally sacred to every other experience I'm having. I don't need more experiences of the ones where I'm privy to its logic, and I don't need less of the experiences where I don't feel like I'm privy to its logic. I'm reluctant to say I'm happy to be wherever I am, because again, happiness is one of those preconceptual arguments. My brain chemicals have to be in a certain place in order to qualify for happiness. I guess what I'm saying is I value equally the experiences, not as a separate thing. So in the experience of heartbreak, I'm heartbroken, and I equally value that while I'm having the heartbroken experience. I'm not separate or equanimous with it. It's fully embodied, for want of a better term. It's fully what's going on. It's not watered down and logicked. There's no guru on the side saying, this too will pass. You know, there's no one taking away the intensity of my experiences. I just trust them, regardless of their intent, and not even regardless, just I trust the intensity. I trust the beauty, the sacredness, the importance, the relevance, the purpose. And not because I can see where the purpose leads to and I can see some outcome to it, like I was saying before, like the shape of the logic. I can't see those things. But I don't need to see those things in order to trust. That's kind of the only way I can explain that is that I was born with it. But it's got nothing to do with birth and death and identity and personhood. It's got, you know, like I don't have a concept of a soul that's attached to me, that's connected to all that is, that's like this line of succession into some physical form, which is a vessel. I don't have that picture of the universe. I just have the one big pool. And I trust that one big pool, the way I trust that even though there's an experience of sunrise and sunset, I know that the sun never actually goes out. I know that the sun's always shining, and just because I'm having the experience of a sunrise or a sunset, it doesn't mean the sun has gone anywhere. It doesn't mean I actually have this physical form that is separate from anything. And I guess that will make sense to some people. But I'm happy for it not to make sense. I'm happy for you to have that experience of awareness of what does make sense for you. Like I said before, whether it feels like it's in reaction or opposition or objection to what it is that I'm saying. Because for me, it's not about, you know, building this team of people that agree with me. Because I trust that you are the way that you are for a reason. In the oneness of all that is. So have a think about what flow means to you. And I don't want you to question it. I just want you to have your own experience, your own awareness of what it means to you. I don't want you to necessarily compare it or pick it apart. Just know what it is. You know, maybe make your own video, even just for yourself, saying out loud what flow is for you. And I'll see you next week.